I see you, not just the version you show the world, but the one hiding underneath. The one who smiles even when it hurts. The one who keeps going because stopping feels scarier than pretending. The one who says, "I'm fine," out of instinct, even when you're not. I see the exhaustion in your eyes that no amount of sleep can fix. I see the way you hold yourself together when everything inside feels like it's unraveling. And I know what it's like to be the one everyone counts on while silently wondering if anyone would notice if you disappeared. I know what it's like to carry the weight of your pain quietly, so others don't feel uncomfortable. To convince yourself that your struggles aren't serious enough to speak out loud. So you become a master of pretending. A professional at masking. A quiet survivor in a world that only notices loud wounds. But this pretending? It takes a toll. It drains something sacred from you. Because every time you fake a smile, every time you bury the truth, every time you say you're okay when you're not, a part of you feels more distant, more invisible, more alone. And it's not your fault. You didn't choose this armor out of weakness, you built it because at some point, you had to. Maybe no one made space for your pain. Maybe you were told you were too sensitive. Maybe you learned that your role was to be strong, not honest. So you adapted. You protected yourself. But behind the functioning, behind the performance, behind the smile that's gotten too good at lying, there's still you. The real you. The one who's been quietly aching for someone to say, "You don't have to do this alone anymore." And I'm here to say it, you don't. Not tonight. Not here. Not in this space. You can lay it down, even if just for a moment. You're allowed to be seen. You didn't learn to pretend for no reason. You learned it because it felt safer. Maybe somewhere along the way, you were made to believe that your feelings were too much, that your sadness was inconvenient, your anxiety dramatic, your pain excessive. Maybe when you tried to express yourself, you were met with silence, judgment, or subtle dismissal. So you adapted. You learned to protect yourself the only way you knew how, by becoming smaller, quieter, easier. You stopped letting people see the real you because every time you did, it felt like you lost a little more of your sense of safety. Vulnerability didn't lead to connection, it led to discomfort, distance, and disappointment. And so, slowly, you made yourself more acceptable. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You offered support while quietly falling apart. You became a master at managing other people's emotions while pushing your own into hiding. There's nothing wrong with you for choosing to survive that way. In fact, it shows how deeply you wanted to be loved, how far you were willing to go just to feel some sense of belonging. But you need to know this, your pain doesn't have to be hidden to be respected. You don't have to keep performing strength to deserve care. The people who made you feel like you were too much were wrong. What they couldn't hold doesn't mean you weren't worthy of holding. It's not your fault they didn't have the capacity, but now you get to decide whether you keep shrinking for others, or whether you start expanding back into yourself. And maybe you don't feel ready to stop pretending all at once. That's okay. You can start with softness, with honesty in small doses, with the quiet courage of saying to yourself, "I don't want to hide anymore." Because your truth, even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable, is not something to apologize for. It's something to be honored. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying it all alone, the kind that doesn't look dramatic from the outside but weighs heavy inside your chest. It's the kind of tired that settles deep in your bones after years of pretending to be the strong one, the dependable one, the unshakable one. The one who always has the right words, the calm energy, the solutions. But no one sees the toll it takes. No one sees the hours you've spent alone in your head, talking yourself through emotions no one else knows you're having. No one sees the silent breakdowns behind bathroom doors, the way your chest tightens when someone says, "You're so strong, I don't know how you do it." Because the truth is, you don't know how you do it either. You just do. Because if you stop, everything might fall apart. And it's lonely, not the kind of lonely that comes from a lack of people, but the kind that comes from a lack of being seen. You walk through life split in two, the version the world admires, and the version that quietly aches to be held. And you begin to wonder if anyone would still love you if you stopped being the strong one. If you stopped showing up perfect. If you let the cracks show. There's a deep longing inside you to be witnessed, not for what you do, but for who you are, even when you're a mess, even when you're falling apart, even when the smile fades. You want someone to sit with you in the dark, not try to fix it, not offer advice, just stay. Just say, "You don't have to hold it all together right now." So let me say it to you, you don't have to hold it all together to be loved. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to be uncertain. You're allowed to be a little bit lost. And you're still worthy. Still lovable. Still enough. Even in the mess. Especially in the mess. You don't have to bare your entire soul to begin healing. You don't have to pour everything out at once to be real. Vulnerability doesn't always look like collapsing into someone's arms or confessing your darkest thoughts in a flood of words. Sometimes it starts much smaller. Sometimes it begins with a pause. A breath. A quiet moment when you allow yourself to admit that you're not okay, even if you only say it to yourself. That in itself is a sacred act of truth. That is softness. That is bravery. Being real with yourself, even in the privacy of your own mind, is a powerful first step. Maybe it looks like journaling without censoring your thoughts. Maybe it's letting the tears fall when you feel them coming, instead of swallowing them down. Maybe it's resting when you want to push through, or canceling plans without guilt. Maybe it's whispering one true sentence out loud, "I'm not as okay as I seem." That alone can crack something open. There is so much pressure to perform emotional perfection, to look like you're handling everything, to smile through the pain, to be the person others can lean on. But that pressure? It's heavy. It's unsustainable. And every time you let yourself soften, every time you drop the mask, even briefly, you give yourself permission to heal. You remind yourself that you don't have to earn love through performance. You remind your nervous system that it's safe to be honest. You remind the wounded parts of you that they're not too much to hold. Vulnerability doesn't make you weaker, it makes you human. It makes you free. And when you begin to show up as the real you, even in small, trembling steps, you start to build a life that actually feels like yours. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to be fixed to be worthy. You just have to be real. Start there. Start small. Start soft. And trust that it's more than enough. You've spent so much time learning how to be visible without ever really being seen. You've mastered the art of showing up, polished, capable, composed, even when you're crumbling underneath. And maybe people admire that version of you. Maybe they praise your strength, your resilience, your ability to handle anything. But what you really need, what your soul has been quietly aching for, isn't admiration. It's tenderness. It's someone who looks past the performance and sees the real you, the hurting you, the version you've hidden for so long because you didn't think anyone could hold it. You deserve more than being acknowledged for what you do. You deserve to be held for who you are. You deserve to be embraced, not just when you're strong, but especially when you're not. Especially when your voice shakes, when your walls crack, when your heart says, "I can't pretend anymore." Needing support does not make you fragile. It makes you human. We're not meant to carry everything alone, no matter how well we've learned to. You are not a burden for wanting to rest. You are not a problem for needing space. You are not too much just because you feel deeply. You are someone with a heart that's been strong for too long, and now it's time to let someone else, or even just yourself, help hold the weight. So let this moment be your exhale. Let this be the place where you stop proving and start receiving. You don't have to be okay right now. You don't have to have the right words. You don't have to wrap it all up with a lesson. You just have to be here. That's enough. You are worthy of care even when you're not fine. Especially then. Let the softness in. Let the kindness land. Let the truth settle. You've always been worthy of love, even in your most unguarded, unfinished state.